Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And Brandon is off today. He's out on location,
He is
I think,
on location.
or he might be sleeping. Anyway, so with that in mind, I think it gives us a little more latitude to discuss the stuff that triggers Brandon or gets him, upset or whatever. So, because, whatever. We all have different temperaments, Allan, and he can get very passionate about some topics. So we're, anyway. But so you want to talk about something called IP fatigue, and I think I know where you're going with some of that. We're not going to talk about Andor. We've covered Andor. I wholeheartedly recommend it, but
I finally watched it.
Yeah.
Man, I love any production where you got good chemistry. You got people focused on the product.
Yeah.
And the other thing I will give to this product, it understood it was a limited product.
Exactly. Don't drag this out for 6 seasons.
You got to get it in and get it done.
I mean, You always say, Allan, we can't miss you if you don't leave.
There you go. So, and they took time to get it right. They took 3 years in between seasons.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that's good,
the outcome was worth it. Totally there. And I'm advocating that. I'm going to play off of that and advocate, can a few more of y'all learn this lesson?
Okay, so that's on the table. But before we get to that, Max, you had something kind of funny about, and we never do politics on this show, but I don't know that this is even political. I think it's just goofy.
Well, let's get to bill title HBA number A4814, otherwise known as the Forbidding Unlawful Representation of Role-Playing in Education Act, otherwise known as the Furries Act.
Oh, no.
You better explain.
And good news, Allan, it's from Texas.
Okay. They don't play
better.
games in Texas. So what is this legislation all about?
Well, it essentially seeks to ban students from presenting themselves as anything other than human beings on school grounds, with the exceptions of events like Halloween and theater performances. And don't worry, your school mascot is safe.
Okay, but you better explain what this actually looks like.
Okay, so this is the prohibition of everything from non-human behaviors like barking, hissing, or whatever, and then including animal accessories, making animal noises, and finally, using litter boxes.
So if you're saying I identify as a furry or I'm this chipmunk character, I need to be accommodated in the bathroom.
I can agree with banning glitter. All right, I'll just forget politics. I'll go with you don't need the glitter. Stop.
I mean, okay.
Attend any convention. If there's one person with glitter in the room, everybody leaving the room is going to be wearing glitter. So.
Now, I have to say, Allan, we have many friends who are furries. I mean, we go to the Memphis Fur Meet and promote, and I like them, and boy, are they passionate. And those suits and those costumes they wear are really expensive. But let's be honest, if we're talking about fringe members of fandom, the furries are sort of noteworthy. I mean, that's a nice way to put it. They're very noteworthy. But, Max, I didn't realize that people that dress up in their furry costumes are identifying that way. I thought they're just dressing as like a big fox or a big rabbit or something. Are you saying that they behave this way out of costume?
I suppose so.
Huh. I got to have a talk with our buddy Josh Lincoln about this.
Yeah, we're going to have to. I'm going to stick with banning the glitter box.
Okay.
I really am.
I'm sort of intrigued by that. And the fact that they need legislation to work this out.
Oh.
And it looks so proper and everything. So, for example, I'm just reading the actual legislation right now, or the proposed bill. It says, a bill to be entitled, an act relating to the display of and allowance for non-human behaviors in Texas schools.
Oh, gosh.
You know what it is, Allan? Okay, the thing for me is, like, I remember being in high school, and I remember my mindset, and if there was anything you could do to what do they call it, juke the system, if you could work the system to your advantage, you did that. So how many of these kids are doing this stuff to get out of, like, I don't know, taking a final exam or getting a class break or getting something? You know what I mean? It's like, I just wonder how much of this is done with serious intent versus like, hey, if I can get away with it, if these adults are stupid enough to let me do this.
So I need to take a litter box break, so I'm going away from my desk.
Or I got to hibernate during the final exam or something like that. And I don't know. That's what I'm just wondering. But that's interesting, Max. And they, you're saying they took it serious, but they took the trouble to make this make the name of this legislation an acronym that spells out furry, which is pretty funny.
Although nowadays they call these things backronyms.
Backronyms, so
which is an acronym formed from an already existing word.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, we'll be following this with great interest. But it sounds like just another sign of the times, I guess. So, well, Allan, let's change gears. Speaking of a sign of the times, let's tee this up before we go to break. You talked about IP fatigue. I think I know where you're going with this.
Don't worry, Allan. I get that too when I eat asparagus.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
hey,
wow.
that's pretty good, Max, actually. Okay. What is IP fatigue?
The punning is just going to be terrible this episode.
Yeah.
IP fatigue. You made a movie. You did good. You had an idea. A lot of stories come in trilogies. I'm kind of down with that. But I gotta tell you right now, I'm looking at what's coming out over the next 2 or 3 years, and I gotta tell you, I've got IP fatigue, and it's not
intellectual property. That's what we're talking about.
It is not any one camp, but we had an idea. We've got our intellectual property. We came up with, a movie with giant bugs in it.
Yeah.
All right, this was our movie. This was our idea. This is our IP. And dadgummit, if we haven't got to throw giant bugs at you at least once every 18 months.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, my gosh, some of these IPs have been going on since the 70s.
So we should say RIP to the IPs.
Oh, my gosh.
I got some thoughts about that because I just feel like it was different. We had sequels in the 80s, and I mean, with the exception of franchises like Star Trek, which was pretty well established, I don't remember having, like the Ghostbusters universe. We had sequels, and then that was about it. So, IP's getting out of control. So we'll continue the conversation when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Sharknado was an inside job. The Geek Patrol is back.
And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass, and Brandon Olmsted will be back next week. If you're just tuning in, Allan was discussing IP fatigue, and we're talking about intellectual property fatigue, not what happens when you eat asparagus, right, Max? So, but something occurred to me. I want to make sure I'm on the same page, Allan, because okay, for example, back in the day, especially you think of literature or something. We had a story. Moby Dick comes out.
Right.
Or A Christmas Carol. Well, we didn't get the Moby Dick franchise or the Moby Dick universe or something. It was like, this is a story. We told the story. Now we're going to move on, and that's it. Today, it seems like everything has to be like a universe or the Scooby-Doo cinematic universe or the whatever. I feel like it's weakening storytelling, and it's also limiting creativity. Why can't we just have a one-off story and be done with it? So.
We've talked about the movie industry itself. And when was the last time you bought a newspaper?
Right. Yeah.
Technology changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can still get a newspaper, quote unquote, a newspaper.
Yeah.
It's a news service.
It's a cleaning service. It's perfect for picking up stains.
Well, I mean, I hate to say it's obsolete. You get the news immediately on your phone. Why do you need to read something 24 hours later?
But that means we still have a reporter. That still means somebody's gathering the data and somebody's writing the article. But we're not putting out the paper. No one is going to run in and yell, "Stop the presses" anymore.
Right.
Technology moved on. Technology changed. Prices have moved on and changed. A bucket of popcorn is a family of four dinner. And I understand these things, but okay, we had a dinosaur movie. And I really liked that dinosaur movie. It was good. It was fun. And you really looked forward to the next dinosaur movie because you knew you were going to get one. But, we have a new dinosaur movie coming out now, 25 years after the first one. And it's even got people in it I like. And I just don't care. You're not going to show me anything new. I've already had, movie after movie after movie after movie. And, again, I've said it before. I can't miss you if you won't go away.
Yeah.
Now, how about something like with the Naked Gun? Because it's like, my thinking is like, why would you rehash an old IP and rather than just making a new one yourself?
Okay, with Naked Gun, it had a very short run. There's not 37 Naked Guns, and they were a long time ago. I'm surprised your age, you even know what it is. Of what we have now is a new actor, and I'm going to pick on Shakespeare a little bit. Every so often, a new actor comes along and says, I'd like a shot at that role. And in this case, I think we've got a whole brand new cast, and they're looking at a very old IP, and they all went, I think we'd like a shot at this. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the quote-unquote new chapter to the Naked Gun. But this isn't Naked Gun 35. We haven't had a Naked Gun every year of their lives to get to this one.
It's like how we hopscotch back and forth between Robin Hood movies. It's like, oh, good, Robin Hood's back.
Yeah, well, but every Robin Hood movie hasn't been Robin Hood 3, Robin Hood 4, Robin Hood 5. It has been different takes on it.
It's the Shakespeare effect, like you said.
Different people go, I think I'd like a shot at that. And we're going to do it a little different. We're going to do it this way or that way. I'm looking at a lot of the releases coming up, and it's a particular IP. It's shot a certain way. It's delivered a certain way. No offense, but the story is horrifyingly predictable that way.
Right.
And a lot of the new IPs aren't even new. They're just some new version of the actual hit movie.
Well, I keep wondering if Hollywood's eventually just going to go away because it's already dying out there. I mean, they're moving out of California too because it's expensive, and I mean they can go to Georgia and shoot a movie for half the price or something like that. So.
Well, and we didn't have any hit shows out of Georgia with dead people in them for the last 20 years. It does beg some big questions here, looking at the entertainment industry, going, now what?
Yeah.
You've almost priced me out of the theater. I don't really want to go see Minecraft to have the kids scream and jump up and down in the seats and throw popcorn. I don't mind it. I just don't want to be there with them.
Scene.
That's just not my scene.
Yeah.
I might throw some toast at a midnight Rocky Horror Picture Show, which thank heavens nobody's remade. But I'm just wondering, and this is kind of a call to everybody out there listening to the show, we'd like to get some emails on this. What are you tired of? What have you seen enough of? And it could just be an actor. It could be a genre. It could be...
That's a good point.
The simple fact that Disney won't quit remaking every good animated movie they did.
Oh, yeah, because I think they pushed your buttons with Lilo and Stitch, right?
Well, I'm looking forward to that one, but I already have fatigue because it's like, all right, I liked the first one. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Okay, is this, and we've already had several iterations of Stitch since then in cartoons and other stuff.
I'd like to bring up something related to going back a little bit back in the day. Like, how did books do the idea of sequeling better than we are doing nowadays?
Oh, okay. Yeah, because the written word is obviously a whole different situation. So, all right. Well, we'll continue the discussion of IPs when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The Geek Patrol is back.
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And Brandon Olmstead will be back next week. He's on assignment, actually. But before the break, well, Allan, you were talking about IP fatigue. And Max brought up something that was worth noting because there was, you could say, IP back in the day when we just had the written word before movies or anything. And we were talking about, like, it can get really draining and it can be just a lack of creativity when you're talking about just rehashing the same Jurassic Park movie over and over. But yet, Sherlock Holmes is a good example. Sherlock Holmes is intellectual property, right? But every Sherlock Holmes story feels fresh and new. And in fact, when Sir Arthur Conan Doyle retired, they demanded that they bring Sherlock Holmes back. And so it works there, you know, in situations like that.
Or like, for example, when you actually see, let's just say Alexander Dumas with the Three Musketeers, so it's like, all right, you have that base story, but then you have these splinter stories that may take place a little bit later, and it might follow what did another character do afterwards. Like the Man in the Iron Mask, I believe, follows one of the other Musketeers rather than the main character. So how is that less fatiguing than, let's just say, what we're doing nowadays?
Yeah, but Max, I bet you if you had 300 Three Musketeer books, you'd be pretty tired of it. Like, don't you think? Like, okay, the reason Sherlock Holmes makes sense to me is every book is a particular case. The case of the Hound of the Baskervilles or the case of the Scarlet Letter. So to me, that's fresh. It's like we're not rehashing anything. We're not telling the same story over and over. Every story is individual. Yet you have that harmony of the Sherlock Holmes universe.
Two of our favorite actors are from the Sherlock Holmes universe.
Who's that?
Mr. Cumberbatch. How about Frodo and Smaug? Or what is he called now? Oh, Doctor Strange.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they did a variation.
Oh, they did a modern show.
They did a modern version of Sherlock Holmes together. And again, I'm going to say there's certain properties, and Sherlock Holmes is a great example of somebody else wanting to take a shot at it.
Yeah. But it works there. I mean, that works okay.
And it's because it takes effort, so you don't get one every year. It goes away. You can miss it for 4 or 5 years, and then somebody else comes along with a different view on it and goes, I'd like a crack at Dr. Watson. I'd like to take a shot at Moriarty. I'd like to look at it from this other lens. And I think that's why we haven't exhausted Sherlock Holmes, or we haven't exhausted the Three Musketeers. And we've had better movies and worse movies. I think just, I don't know, I'm just looking at the list of, new movies coming out, and okay, how much John Wick can we do?
Yeah. Okay.
Loved the first three, man. We had a different take each time.
Yeah. And
it's like, all right, now we're kind of getting to the point where, how is this going to keep working? I'm kind of shocked because one of the biggest movies of the year was, they didn't even bother to tell anybody what genre it was.
Yeah,
here comes Sinners.
Right, and don't spoil it because some people don't know. You ruined it for me because you told me what it was. But if you don't know, apparently it's a pretty, and I don't even know. I haven't checked to see how it's doing at the box office, but
well, it's doing great everywhere.
Yeah,
it's been quite a slam. I was watching Nope the other day.
Nope. Oh yeah, great title.
I still don't know if that was a UFO, a drama, or a ghost story but it was finally a different take on something.
That's what we want. Something
And
new.
I was kind of watching this and I was going, all right, I'm going to have to watch it again to get it.
And another thing is also considering what makes a series good. Like you said, if it's self-contained, like for example, going back to one of my favorite anything is anime. And some of the best anime that I've seen are just 12 episodes and done. Like a series about like magical girls in middle school that somehow yanked at the heartstrings and got really visceral and violent. And you wouldn't expect that, but it was done after 12 episodes. Or another thing, I think if you want to continue an intellectual property in a way that is kind of doesn't leave you exhausted or fatigued, I'm thinking of a series like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where it's like, all right, each season is a new part or a new arc. It might be a family member of the Joestar line, but it's like each character is like different and fresh and weird. And I kind of think that's, if you want to continue a property, maybe do it in a way that's like that.
Yeah. I got an idea about this after the break. Now that you're making me think of this, but it's funny, Max, because my mind was starting to go to animes as well, because one thing that seems Death Note, perfect example. That is a hugely popular anime. Same with Attack on Titan. Well, Attack on Titan, they kind of drug it out, but there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that story ended. They didn't just leave it. And same with Death Note, there was a resolution to it, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the anime storytellers are just better at showing that restraint of like, this is the story we're going to tell. It's going to take this many issues or this many episodes, and then we're going to go away, and we're not going to come back in 5 years with a whole new rehash of the same thing that we just showed you. So I think there's something to be said for that.
Well, I mean, there's always hope, because there's new film people out there cutting their chops now. There's new people doing things, and occasionally just having something that's just plain out entertaining.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
I think is what I'm really looking forward to at this point.
Now, so people don't think we're just being negative and too doom and gloom. We have some positive ideas about where to go with this,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
I do, especially, and so we've stay tuned, because we have optimism on the way. You're listening to Geek Tank Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The Geek Patrol is back.
Surprise, you're dead!
And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass. And Brandon Olmstead will be back next week, and he's on assignment. Before the break, during the show, we've been talking about IP fatigue. In other words, like, we're getting all these cinematic universes, and we're getting all these maybe stories that are drawn out and rehashed and not giving us something fresh, and really even tentative storytelling, you could say. And I know I've recommended this before. I don't know if anybody else besides me has watched this, but I really enjoyed a documentary that came out a couple months ago. It's called Becoming Led Zeppelin. And whether you're a Led Zeppelin fan or not, the one thing that is noteworthy is one of the reasons for their success was they had a unique sound. Every album was something new. They always wanted to do something different. And what I learned in that movie, Allan, I didn't know, was that Jimmy Page, well, apart from being a very talented musician and producer, was like a really smart businessman. And that's why I think Led Zeppelin became so successful. So basically what he did is he set up he knew how to write and produce. And so what he did was the band recorded the entire album, and then they approached, and so it was made exactly the way they wanted it. It had the sound they wanted. And then they presented it to Atlantic Records and said, this is our album. Do you want it or not? If not, we're going to go shop somewhere else. And the part of the contract was they have 100% artistic creative freedom to do this. And so they would always record their albums and present it. And to me, so they weren't compromising. They weren't making music by committee. And I think there's something to be said for that. And I mean, we have so many new platforms to make content on. I feel like maybe this is maybe this is a difficult period for Hollywood, but I still think good content is going to arise from this. I don't know. What do you think? So,
well, I think I think we need to identify the actual problem, and the problem is technology's changed.
That's the situation. I mean,
that's
what's changed
when you and I were kids, there was a movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some television, but there was movie theater.
Right.
And then TV, has grown and grown and grown, and suddenly with the made-for-TV movies and TV shows, well, we've outgrown that now.
And before Blockbuster, if you missed that movie, well, you missed it, while it was in theaters. You may get it on a rerun in 20 years, or you may not. So
and then we got cable.
Yeah.
And now cable meant that movies were in the theaters a lot less because now they wanted to get them on to the movie channels and make more money that way. And now we've reached a point with the streaming services where content doesn't even have to go to the theater.
Yeah.
But these are different formats. And something that went to the theater and maybe didn't do so good rolls over to streaming, and suddenly it's a juggernaut.
It's funny how that works, too. Like, it becomes a cult classic.
So suddenly, what's the big hits? What's really coming out? Why? And I'll be honest, how much content is coming out?
Yeah.
I was just thinking of something about the difference between streaming and cable. It actually seems like streaming is more expensive because what it essentially is just a more expensive version of cable. Because whereas cable, you paid for like a bundle of a different variety of channels, what essentially streaming is just, welcome to my channel. You have to pay to watch it.
Isn't streaming even just sort of a cheaper version of renting from Blockbuster or something like that? I mean, you're basically renting, right? I mean, if you have Netflix, you're paying a monthly fee and you get to watch all these things, which you get the value is pretty good, but at the same time, how many streaming channels do we have now? And it is getting more expensive than cable, and so I don't know.
Well, that is kind of that's my question, I guess, to the audience is, where do you fall in this? What do you want to see? What would you like to see a streaming service or a movie company or an IP provider? Where should they be going with this? What should we be getting? We've got The Old Guard getting ready to come out. It looks like it'd make a great theater movie. It's going to be straight to Netflix.
Wait a minute. The Old Guard, is that part 2?
Charlize Theron.
They already had that come out. I mean, is this finally a sequel to that one, or season 2 or
whatever? They got Charlize Theron, and who else was in that?
That was a good one. That was a pretty actually well done movie. So, but
bullet train explosion. You start looking at all of these different, I guess, documentaries could be out there, animes could be out there of what's going to happen with AI. It's just very different. I'm looking at the ads and I'm saying, okay, well, Disney live action, yet another movie that we already liked.
Yeah.
Going, yeah, okay, I liked it, but you're now making 3 versions of it.
Well, I guess for me, if a storyteller, like I said, it really struck me, the whole notion of how Led Zeppelin operated and recorded their music, of having full creative freedom. Well, there's some storytellers that are really good. If you give them the freedom to make their product and you don't insert all these restrictions or all these, limitations on them, you might get some really good content. And because we have so many new platforms and new ways to release it, maybe the thing for me is I do believe there's probably lots of great content out there. You got to sift through the bad content to find it, though. There's 8 million different things on these streaming channels that you got to hunt through. But sometimes you just come across, and then you do come across these like hidden gems. So they're out there. Maybe what we need is new filtering technology to just filter through and find the best content. So
that might be I'm still interested in what the next iteration beyond the standard movie theater is going to be.
Well, whatever it is, we're not going to discover it today because the show's over. We got to get out of here, you guys. So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Maximilian.
And I'm Allan Gilbreth, reminding you that the silver screen may still have a silver lining.